It was just another busy Saturday evening at the charming family-owned diner, the Maple Leaf. The soft clink of silverware, the hum of quiet conversations, and the sizzle of food cooking in the back filled the air. The dim lights created a warm and inviting atmosphere, perfect for families to gather and enjoy a meal. Inside, one of the newer employees, Jamal, was doing his best to keep up with the crowd. As a black man in his mid-20s, he'd learned to navigate the occasional uncomfortable glance, but he had always prided himself on his ability to deliver exceptional service. His smile never faltered, even when he had to rush back and forth between tables, delivering plates of steaming pasta and freshly grilled steaks. Tonight, however, would be different. At a booth near the corner, a couple of middle-aged diners, a man and a woman, sat with their backs straight and their eyes fixed on their menus. They appeared to be regulars, dressed in crisp, expensive clothes, carrying an air of superiority. Jamal had served them before, and while they were never particularly warm, they were never outright rude, at least not until tonight. As Jamal approached the table with a tray of fresh drinks, the man's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a slight sneer. The woman barely looked up, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. "Excuse me," the man barked, waving a hand dismissively at the drinks. "We don't want to be served by him." Jamal, taken aback, paused for a moment, unsure of what to say. His polite smile wavered. "I'm sorry, sir. Is there anything wrong with the service?" The man's tone hardened. "You heard me," he snapped. "We don't want him here. We demand you fire this person and get us someone else. We don't want to be waited on by someone like that." The words hit Jamal like a slap in the face. He could feel the sting of the insult, his heart racing in his chest, but he refused to let his emotions show. He'd been in situations like this before, and he knew better than to engage with hatred. Keeping his voice steady, Jamal replied, "Sir, I assure you, I'm doing my best to provide great service to all our guests. If there's an issue, I'll be happy to address it." But the man was relentless. His eyes blazed with indignation. "No, no, no. You don't understand. We're paying customers, and we demand better. Call your manager or whoever's in charge. I want him gone, right now." Jamal's mind raced. This wasn't just a complaint about his service. This was about something much deeper, something rooted in prejudice and hate. But before he could respond, a voice interrupted from across the room. "What seems to be the problem here?" Jamal turned, and to his surprise, the owner of the Maple Leaf, Ms. Gloria Thompson, was standing at the entrance of the dining room. She was a woman in her 50s, known for her warmth, no-nonsense attitude, and the reputation she had built for making sure every customer was treated fairly. The staff adored her, and the regulars respected her. She had always been a force to be reckoned with, but tonight, she was about to become something more. The man turned to face her, his smug expression quickly transforming into one of annoyance. "This waiter," he said, pointing a finger at Jamal, "he's the problem. We don't want him serving us. We want him fired. It's absolutely unacceptable." Ms. Thompson's face remained unreadable, her expression cool as she crossed the room toward them. "I see. Well, I'm the owner of this restaurant, and I don't take kindly to anyone being treated like that, especially my staff." She shot a quick glance at Jamal, whose eyes were locked on the floor. "Jamal, go ahead and step to the back for a moment." Jamal hesitated, but he nodded and walked toward the kitchen, his mind still racing. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he knew he had to stay composed. The man, sensing his victory, sat back smugly in his seat as Ms. Thompson took a step closer to their table. "So," she began, her voice calm but filled with quiet authority, "you want Jamal fired?" "That's right," the man replied, clearly relishing the moment. "He's unfit to be here. His presence is a disgrace." Ms. Thompson's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't one of kindness. "I see. Well, let me tell you something." She paused, her gaze piercing. "Jamal is one of my best employees, and if you think for a second that I'm going to let someone like you tell me how to run my business, you're gravely mistaken." The woman sitting next to the man glanced uneasily at her companion, sensing that things were starting to take a turn. but he was too invested in his anger to notice. Ms. Thompson continued, her voice unwavering. "But what's more important is that Jamal happens to be my son." The man froze, his smug expression falling away. The woman gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? "Yes," Ms. Thompson said, her tone now filled with a sense of pride. "Jamal is my son, and I'm incredibly proud of him. He's worked hard to get where he is, and no amount of ignorance will change that." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. The man's face turned red with embarrassment as his eyes darted between Ms. Thompson and the empty space where Jamal had just been standing moments before. "So," Ms. Thompson said, her voice now filled with a biting edge, "how about we get this straight? You want him gone, and I'm telling you that's not going to happen. You're welcome to leave if you feel that strongly about it." The man opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. His face twisted in frustration, and he looked down at his hands, as if trying to gather the courage to respond. But Ms. Thompson wasn't finished. "And let me make one more thing clear," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "The way you've spoken to Jamal, the way you've disrespected him, those actions are unacceptable in my restaurant. You may be a paying customer, but that doesn't mean you get to treat my staff like garbage." The woman sitting next to the man looked down at the table, clearly uncomfortable. She opened her mouth, but it was too late. The man, defeated, stood up, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. "We'll leave," he muttered, his voice low. "This place isn't worth our time anyway." As they gathered their things and stormed out of the diner, the tension in the air slowly lifted. The other customers, who had been watching in stunned silence, began to murmur amongst themselves, a ripple of approval spreading through the room. Ms. Thompson turned to Jamal, who had quietly returned to the dining area. She gave him a reassuring nod, and he gave her a grateful smile. "Thanks, Mom," Jamal said softly. Ms. Thompson smiled back at him, pride in her eyes. "Anytime, son. Anytime." The evening's events had unfolded quickly, and now the once bustling diner had returned to its normal rhythm. The clatter of dishes, the chatter of families, and the occasional burst of laughter filled the air once more. But there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere, an undercurrent of respect that hadn't been there before. As Jamal cleared a nearby table, he couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation from the remaining customers. Whispers of what had just transpired, of the confrontation, and of Ms. Thompson's defense of her son, were circulating through the room. "Did you hear what the owner did? She kicked that guy out. I didn't know Jamal was her son. I thought he was just another employee. I don't know how people think they can get away with being so rude. But that was something else. Good for her." Jamal's chest swelled with a mixture of gratitude and pride. His mother had always been a strong woman, a beacon of kindness and fairness, but also one who didn't tolerate disrespect. He'd grown up with her guiding him, teaching him the importance of standing up for oneself. But seeing her in action, watching her protect him so fiercely in front of strangers, was something else entirely. It made him feel like he wasn't just another waiter. He was her son, and that meant the world. After the dinner rush subsided, Ms. Thompson called Jamal into the back office. The small space was cluttered with paperwork, receipts, and a few framed pictures of the diner's early days, a reminder of the hard work she'd put into building the place from the ground up. "Have a seat, Jamal," she said, her voice warm but serious. "I know that was a tough moment for you out there." Jamal sat down, rubbing his hands together, his mind still processing everything. "I didn't know what to think when they started talking like that. It's one thing to get a complaint, but that was something else." "I know, honey. I could tell from the moment I walked out there that it wasn't just about the service. People like that, they're always looking for a reason to bring others down. It's not about you. It's about them." Jamal nodded, but there was still a heaviness in his heart. "It still hurts, though. You know? It's one thing to deal with racist attitudes, but when it's right in front of your face and there's nothing you can do about it." Ms. Thompson reached across the desk, placing a hand on his. "It's not easy. It never will be. But you have something that they'll never have. You have strength, integrity, and a family who will always have your back. Jamal smiled weakly, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. Thanks, Mom. I needed to hear that. She gave him a gentle smile in return. I know. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are a lot of people who care about you, and more importantly, there are a lot of people who respect you for who you are. Don't let the ignorance of one or two people make you doubt that. The door to the office creaked open, and one of the other waiters, Lucy, poked her head in. Hey, Ms. Thompson, can I grab a word? Of course, Lucy. Come on in. As Lucy entered, she gave Jamal a friendly wave. Hey, Jamal. I just wanted to check in on you after what happened tonight. I know that guy was a jerk, but I think it's pretty awesome how your mom handled it. Jamal chuckled softly. Yeah, I can't say I expected her to come charging in like that, but I'm glad she did. Lucy grinned. You know, everyone in here was talking about it after they left. I think you've got a lot more support than you realize. People were actually impressed by how your mom stood up for you. We all are. Jamal couldn't help but feel a swell of gratitude for his colleagues. It had been a tough night, but hearing that his co-workers had his back made a difference. It reminded him that he wasn't alone in this fight. Ms. Thompson leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed, a thoughtful expression on her face. The world can be a tough place, Jamal, but you've got the best armor there is, your family, your integrity, and your friends. Don't let anyone take that from you. Jamal's mind wandered for a moment, thinking back to all the times he'd been confronted with racism in subtle and overt ways. From the looks he'd received when he first applied for jobs to the snide comments from customers who thought they were entitled to treat him however they liked, it had never been easy. But tonight, something had changed. His mother's defense had reminded him that he was worth fighting for, and that, for once, felt like enough. As Jamal got up to leave the office, Lucy stopped him. Hey, before you go, there's something I wanted to ask. Sure, what's up? We're planning a staff gathering next weekend. You should come. It's just going to be a little get-together at my place, but I think it would be good for everyone. A chance to unwind, you know? Jamal smiled. That sounds nice. I'll be there. Ms. Thompson looked up from her desk, nodding approvingly. That's the spirit, Jamal. Sometimes you just need a little time to reset and remember who you are. With a sense of newfound confidence, Jamal nodded back. Thanks, Mom. And thanks, Lucy. I'm looking forward to it. As Jamal left the office and stepped back into the dining area, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. He had a job to do, and he was good at it. But more than that, he had a family who loved him, a community that supported him, and a place where he truly belonged. The road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but Jamal was ready. And with his mother by his side, and his co-workers standing with him, he knew he could face anything. The next few days were a blur of activity at the diner. Jamal noticed the subtle shifts. Customers were more respectful, the air felt lighter, and he could hear his co-workers chatting more openly about how proud they were of Ms. Thompson for standing up to the racist customer. What had once been a simple job now felt like a statement. He was no longer just serving food, he was a part of something much bigger. That Saturday, Jamal arrived early for the staff gathering at Lucy's place. He wasn't sure what to expect. It was the first time they'd all gathered outside of work. He had a few moments to himself before anyone else arrived, so he wandered around the backyard, taking in the bright evening sky and the gentle sound of the breeze through the trees. It was strange to him, this sense of camaraderie that he hadn't realized he needed until now. When the others started trickling in, Jamal felt a wave of relief. Everyone had been so kind to him after the incident with the racist customer, and tonight was about celebrating that. No work talk, just friends. Lucy welcomed him with a warm smile. Glad you made it, she said, handing him a drink. It's nice to have everyone outside of the diner for once, right? Yeah, it's a lot more relaxed here. Jamal took a sip and smiled back. I really needed this. Throughout the evening, the group swapped stories and laughed together, creating bonds that went beyond the walls of the diner. For the first time in a long while, Jamal felt like he truly belonged. As the night wound down, Lucy pulled him aside. "I know it's been a rough week," she began, her voice soft. "But I just want you to know that you have a lot of support here. You're not just a colleague. You're part of the family." Jamal felt his throat tighten. "Thanks, Lucy. That means a lot to me. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd fit in, but this feels right." Lucy smiled and patted his shoulder. "We're all in this together, Jamal, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As the night continued, Jamal felt his sense of peace deepen. It wasn't just about the work or the drama with that customer. It was about finding a place where he could be himself and still be accepted. The following week, Jamal noticed more subtle changes. He no longer saw the sideways glances or heard the muttered remarks from customers. It was as if something had shifted in the community around the diner. People now came in with more genuine smiles and greetings, especially to Jamal. Some even made a point to tell him how much they admired how his mother handled the incident. One afternoon, during a lull in the diner's usual hustle, Jamal overheard a conversation between two regular customers. They were talking about the event and the actions that followed. "Did you see the way the owner handled that guy?" one customer asked. "She really stood up for him. That's what people should be doing." "I agree," the other customer responded. "That wasn't just about race, it was about respect. And she showed that she cares for her son. That means a lot." Jamal stood in the kitchen, wiping down the counter as the conversation continued outside. His chest swelled with pride, but there was still something unsettling about it. The way people talked about the incident, how they were so quick to praise his mother's actions. He wasn't sure how he felt about it. It was a good thing, yes. But sometimes he wished people saw him for more than just the son of the diner's owner. His mother, ever perceptive, noticed the change in his demeanor when he joined her in the office that afternoon. "Is something bothering you, Jamal?" she asked, her tone gentle but knowing. Jamal hesitated before answering. "It's just, I don't know. I'm glad people are being more respectful, but I feel like they're only doing it because of what you did. Like they see me as your son, not just me." Ms. Thompson paused, her expression thoughtful. "I understand how you feel. But sometimes people need to see that kind of action before they can change. And you're right. People should see you for who you are, not just who your family is. But at the end of the day, it's your character and your integrity that will speak for you in the long run. And that's something no one can take away." Jamal nodded, taking a deep breath. "Thanks, Mom. I needed that." She smiled warmly at him. "You're welcome, Jamal. You're stronger than you know." A few weeks later, the diner was buzzing with excitement. The local news had picked up on the story of the racist customer and how Ms. Thompson had stood up for her son. The small diner, once a humble establishment, was now a symbol of resistance against intolerance. Customers came from all over to support the diner, many leaving positive reviews on social media and in local forums. Ms. Thompson was even invited to speak at a community event about respect, equality, and the importance of standing up for what's right. But as the public attention grew, so did the challenges. Some customers, especially those who didn't agree with Ms. Thompson's actions, began to show up less frequently. Others, however, made it a point to frequent the diner more often, wearing shirts with slogans like "Respect is everything" and "Stand up for what's right." Jamal saw the divide, but he also saw the good that was coming from it. People were having discussions. They were confronting their biases. And that, he realized, was the point of all of this, not just to defend him, but to make a statement that would resonate long after the confrontation had ended. One afternoon, as the lunch rush died down, Jamal found himself sitting with his mom in the back office, reflecting on everything that had happened. "You know," Jamal began, "I didn't realize just how much this place meant to people until recently. I thought it was just a diner, but now it feels like a community center, like we're making a real difference." Ms. Thompson smiled proudly. "You're right. This diner isn't just about food. It's about people. It's about standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. And I think you've realized that more than anyone. Jamal leaned back in his chair, thinking, I don't think I would have figured it out without you, Mom. You've taught me more than I ever realized. You taught me what it means to fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Ms. Thompson looked at him with a mixture of love and pride. And you've made me proud, Jamal. You've shown strength, grace, and integrity. And that's more than I could have ever hoped for. The words hung in the air for a moment, before Jamal spoke again. You know, Mom, I think I'm finally starting to understand. It's not just about standing up for myself. It's about standing up for everyone. And that's the kind of strength I want to show every day. Ms. Thompson nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. And that's the kind of strength the world needs more of. And I'm proud to say you've got it. As Jamal left the office, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just in his mother, but in himself. He had a place where he belonged. He had a community that supported him. And more than anything, he knew that he had the strength to stand up for what was right, no matter what. By the time the diner's anniversary rolled around, things had shifted again. The small, family-owned restaurant had become a symbol of something bigger than just food and service. The diner had grown in popularity, not just because of the delicious meals, but because of the story behind it. People now came to support the stand against racism and to enjoy the warmth that was palpable in the air. It was a place where people came not just for a meal, but for a sense of belonging. Jamal had spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened over the past few months. He was no longer just the son of the owner. He had his own identity now, and he was proud of it. The support from the community had become a new foundation for him. He saw people differently, and they saw him differently too. One evening, after the dinner rush, Jamal was tidying up the front of the diner when a familiar face walked in. It was Mr. Gray, the man who had made the racist demand months ago. Jamal froze for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. Mr. Gray looked different now, like someone who had been through something. He approached the counter, but there was a hesitance in his step. Jamal, I owe you an apology, Mr. Gray began, his voice quiet but sincere. I was wrong that day. I shouldn't have said what I did. I've had some time to think about it, and I realize how hurtful my actions were. I can't change it, but I can offer my apology. Jamal took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling in. He had thought about this encounter many times, whether he'd ever see Mr. Gray again, and if so, how he would react. He could feel his mother's lessons in his heart, the same strength she had shown when standing up for him. This was his moment to choose the same path. I appreciate your apology, Mr. Gray, Jamal said, his voice steady but kind. But it's not just about apologizing. It's about changing how we see each other. I hope this helps you start that journey. Mr. Gray nodded, visibly moved. I know, and I'm willing to try. With that, the tension lifted from the air. Jamal realized that this was the kind of growth he had hoped for. People didn't just need to be called out. They needed to be given a chance to change. And sometimes that change started with an honest conversation. As months passed, the diner continued to thrive, both in business and in its influence. Lucy, Jamal, and the rest of the staff had become more like family than colleagues, and every customer who came through the door felt that sense of warmth. One evening, after a busy dinner service, Ms. Thompson sat with Jamal in the back office, reflecting on the journey they'd been through together. You know, Jamal, Ms. Thompson began, this place has become something I never could have imagined. It's not just the food that keeps people coming back. It's the message. We've created a space where people can feel safe, respected, and heard. Jamal smiled, looking around the familiar space. Yeah, it's amazing. It's not just about the customers anymore. It's about creating something that lasts, something that can change hearts. His mother nodded, her eyes shining with pride. You've always had a big heart, Jamal, and that's what's made all the difference. People feel that. As the evening wore on, the sound of laughter and conversation echoed from the dining area. Jamal realized something. The diner had become a beacon of what it meant to stand together, to face adversity, and to celebrate the power of community. It wasn't just about standing up for the right thing. It was about creating a culture where people felt supported, where change was possible. In that moment, Jamal knew that his mother's strength had been passed down to him. He was no longer just a part of the family business. He was now an active voice in shaping its future. One afternoon, as Jamal was closing the diner for the day, he received a call. It was from a local high school that had heard about his story. They wanted him to come speak to the students about standing up for what's right and the importance of creating a positive community. He felt a rush of excitement. This was his chance to reach a new generation, to teach them the lessons that had shaped his own life. The day of the talk, Jamal stood in front of a group of teenagers, each one looking up at him with curiosity. He could feel the weight of their expectations, but he also felt the power of his words. "I'm here today," Jamal began, "because I believe that change starts with us. Each one of us has the power to stand up for what's right, to show kindness, and to challenge the hate we see in the world. My mother taught me that we should never be afraid to stand up for who we are, no matter what. It's not just about confronting the hate, but about creating a space where everyone is seen, heard, and respected." The room was silent as Jamal's words sank in. He spoke about the power of community, of standing together, and of the strength it takes to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, and to grow from them. As the talk ended, Jamal was greeted by a group of students who thanked him for sharing his story. It was a moment he would never forget, the realization that his mother's lessons had reached beyond just their family and their diner. They had the power to inspire others. Later that evening, as Jamal sat in the diner with his mother, they reflected on the day. "You know, Mom," Jamal said, "I think we've done something bigger than just run a restaurant. We've created a legacy." Ms. Thompson smiled, her eyes proud. "It's not just about what we've done, Jamal. It's about what you're going to do. And I have no doubt you're going to change the world." Jamal smiled back, feeling a surge of confidence. Together we already are. And with that, the diner continued to hum with life, a place of warmth, strength, and community, a place where love and respect would always be on the menu.